All right, good.
Yes, we're good.
All right. Hi, guys. This is the monthly live stream of the Young Greens of Ohio Youth Caucus. I'm Mackenzie. I'll be your host. I'm the co-chair of the Young Greens of Ohio. Austin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Austin Bayshore. I am a member of the International Committee of the Green Party United States and the Green Party of Korea. I am the secretary for the Young Greens of Ohio.
Erum Saleem, would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Saleem from Pakistan Green Party, and I am also deputy convener of Asia Pacific Green Federation, and I am head of women development in Pakistan Green Party.
Mr. Hawkins, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Howie Hawkins. I live in Syracuse, New York. I was the Green Party candidate for president in 2020.
All right, let's get this started. All right, first question, what is imperialism? Mr. Hawkins?
Well, it's the policy or ideology of extending political and economic power from one country over another country or other countries through military or economic and diplomatic force, or all of those means.
Erin, what is imperialism?
Imperialism as old as the culture, it is a system of domination, and it has changed its form as it did in the past. It is, in simple way to understand, imperialism is economic and political control over weaker nations. Strong nations takes over weaker, and the purpose to expand control as far as to become more powerful.
Austin, same question. What is imperialism?
I would agree with all of their definitions of imperialism. It is the economic, cultural, political, or military domination of a weaker nation by a nation that seeks gain profit or expanded interests within the weaker nation for natural resources, cultural hegemony, the domination of cultural aspects, or the exploitation of the people that live in that country under target.
All right, next question. Are there any negatives and or positives of imperialism? Erum?
It has many negative impacts, like imperialist countries through power impose the political and social, economic and military domination over poor and on developing countries. So it makes them unstable, and they impose their power, and they create economic weakness to them.
Austin, what are the positives and or negatives of imperialism?
I don't think there are that many positives to imperialism. Imperialism results in the target country losing their culture, losing their way of life, losing precious natural resources and the ability to develop independently on their own and with their people's own free will. We see time and time again that imperialism results in the unfortunate target country being absolutely unstable, them resorting to racial violence, cultural violence, interethnic violence, while the puppet master gets to pull the strings behind the scenes, and the victims of the attacks, the imperialist aggression, are the oftentimes end up under genocidal conditions. So it's absolutely one of the worst forms of human on human violence we've ever seen in the world, and it's a symptom of capitalism and the disease of cultural hegemony a lot of countries are attempting in the world.
Howie Hawkins, same question. What are the negatives or positives of imperialism?
Well, for the ordinary people, the working people, even in the imperialist countries, there are no positives from an ethical point of view or from a material point of view, because it's the working people that fight the imperialist wars, and it's the resources that are squandered on war instead of domestic needs. And for the countries who are victims of imperialism, they experience exploitation, oppression, and war and destruction. So it's pretty negative from the viewpoint of most people. It's only the elites in the imperialist countries that benefit materially.
All right. Next question. How are war and imperialism and capitalism intertwined? Austin?
Well, I think you can't have imperialism without capitalism, and you can't have capitalism without imperialism. A capitalist market always is profit driven. That's the only thing the capitalists care about is money, money, money. So when you have that combined with an unethical genocidal war machine that's always seeking to exploit, even from the host country, the poor victims of the capitalist war machine are most often the minority communities and the poor, as they get recruited to fight, as Howie Hawkins said, the rich man's war. So it's always looking for a profit, always looking for money, the cheapest alternative resource. And many times, African, Middle Eastern, Southeast Asian countries are the victims of that type of interregional violence.
Mr. Hawkins, how are war/imperialism and capitalism intertwined?
Well, we've had imperialism before capitalism. I mean, we had empires based on what you might call a tributary mode of production, where basically peasants gave tribute, surplus value, surplus product to the elites. And of course, the elites want to expand their territory of control to get more tribute. We call that feudalism in Europe. But capitalism is definitely intertwined with imperialism. Capitalism is a system of competitive accumulation of wealth, and that motivates the rich in the capitalist country to get their nation states to expand and protect their economic interests abroad with military force and war if need be. And in capitalism, the rules of private enterprise for profit in markets is like capitalism's system DNA. It's the instructions for competition for profit by any means necessary, including war and imperialist expansion. So you can't have capitalism without imperialism.
All right, Erum, how are war/imperialism and capitalism intertwined?
Yes, these are these are having connection, and there is a relationship between imperialism and capitalism in the sense that imperialism serves the political interest of the capitalism, and by this they create wars to gain huge profit, to selling weapons and making weapons, and they create wars and causing war.
All right, next question. How does the Green Party address the issue of imperialism and war by the United States and other countries around the world? Mr. Hawkins?
Well, we oppose imperialist wars, and we call for deep cuts in military spending and limiting that military spending to what we need to defend our own country, not dominate other countries. So that's what we call for. And, given that both major parties, right now they're giving more money to the Pentagon coming out of the Appropriations Committee than the Pentagon asked for. They're so committed to the military budget and wars abroad that there's no space really between the Democrats and Republicans on that question. And, I would say imperialism has not skipped a beat going from Trump to Biden. Obviously, there are other differences that matter, but when it comes to military spending and imperialism, the two parties are united and the Green Party is opposed.
All right. Erum, how does the Green Party address the issue of imperialism and war by the United States and other countries around the world?
As Green representative, Green are anti-imperialism. We are against imperialism because we support democracy, and we are against war. So because it affects humanity. So everything or every action which affects a human being or humanity, we are against.
All right, Austin, how does the Green Party address the issue of imperialism and war by the United States and other countries around the world?
Well, the Greens have always opposed war. A lot of our Green Party elders and the founders of the Green Party isn't that old in the United States, at least. Our first annual convention was 1984, and we didn't really form until 91 to 2000. So we are a relatively young political ideology, political school of thought. But a lot of our founding members and our Green Party elders came out of the anti-Vietnam War effort. In Korea specifically, the Green Party here has been fighting against another American-led genocide on the peninsula, as earlier, a few years ago, Donald Trump was threatening the DPRK, North Korea, with nuclear annihilation. And then in 2017, when Trump came to Korea, the Green Party joined a lot of progressive left-wing parties, activists, and labor unions to oppose Donald Trump's entry into the Republic of Korea, South Korea. So we've always been opposed to the wars because it is absolutely terrible for the environment. You can never green a fighter jet. You can never make green bombs, unlike some Democratic politicians attempting to suggest to the American people. But just on the issue of environmentalism and human rights, the Green Party has always opposed war and domination because it's not healthy for our society, it's not healthy for a future, and it's not healthy for human development.
All right. Is there anything we as individuals can do to stop countries from spreading imperialism? Erum?
In my opinion, the people from imperialist countries, for example, America, if they don't participate in politics and if they don't stop, then this imperialist mindset will never end. So it will move class to class. So it should be and people should participate. And if we vote Greens, like we are anti-imperialism. So if we vote and support Green, then it can be stopped.
I agree. Austin, is there anything we as individuals can do to stop countries from spreading imperialism?
From the American perspective, one of the most valuable things I have learned living abroad is that just talking about the war crimes that America has committed, because a lot of the times people don't learn about these things. The Nogunri massacre in South Korea, the US Air Force strafed and bombed refugees, killing hundreds of them in a tunnel, children, women, all because they didn't want to leave their homes. The US Army, the Air Force and tank division told these refugees in this small middle of nowhere village to leave because the North Korean soldiers were coming. Koreans thought, well, North Korean soldiers are Korean. We don't care. We don't want to leave. We want to stay in our homes. They forced them out. And as they were walking to the evacuation zone near the ports, the Air Force attacked them, bombed them, strafed them, killing 300 women and children. And just talking about those things that Americans will never learn about does far more to influence people that, hey, we need to stop the war machine because they're hiding stuff from you. That's very, very terrible and has happened in the past.
Mr. Hawkins, is there anything we as individuals can do to stop countries from spreading imperialism?
Yeah, I would say join the Green Party in the United States, the only party that's anti-imperialist. And through that party, we've got to educate the public. If you look at public opinion polling, many green demands like the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, taxing the rich are overwhelmingly popular. But when it comes to military spending and foreign interventions, not so much, because there's just been so much propaganda. You know, football games, they have the flyover, you have ROTC in the schools, and in the mass media, you know, everybody in the military is heroes, even if they're war criminals. So education that Austin was talking about is really important. And to really do education, doing it as an individual, I guess getting online or talking to your friends is something you should do, but it's better to do it as part of an organized force that can amplify everybody's voices. So, we don't have much of a peace movement in this country. The Green Party should be organizing, trying to broaden that out and provide some leadership. So I think those are all things people can do, but as an individual, you need to be part of an organization. And so I would recommend the Green Party.
All right. What will it take, in your opinion, for the cycle of imperialism to end as a whole? Austin.
Oh my gosh. So to end the cycle of American imperialism, we need real progressives in power, actual left-wing politicians. Because in the United States, we have two center-right, well, we have a center-right and a right-wing political party. We do not have, in national government, any socialists. We don't have any real progressives. Yes, we have a caucus in the Democratic Party that likes to pride themselves on being progressive, but even in many countries, they're not considered progressive at all. They're basic center-left politicians in the UK, in France, in Australia, New Zealand, and other multi-party democracies. So we need to do our best to get actual alternatives into government power in the United States, as well as education and providing alternatives to go to the military. Many people join the military because they have no money. They want college paid for. Are there a few that go into the military for sinister reasons? Yeah, absolutely. There are many people that believe in the failed ideology of American exceptionalism. They believe in the lies of the American dream. But we need to provide alternatives such as national health care. We need to provide alternatives like a college fund or ways to avoid student debt that traps so many people my age into the propaganda machine of being able to take care of your student loans or your debt, or being to finally afford that Dodge Charger.
Mr. Hawkins, what will it take, in your opinion, for the cycle of imperialism to end?
System change. We got to replace capitalism with a democratic socialism, which means both economic democracy, where the community and the people working in enterprises really control those enterprises, not a top-down bureaucracy, even if the state owns the enterprise. And it also means political democracy and changing the structures we have of governance in the United States in particular. I mean, the big problem here is that public opinion doesn't translate into public policy. We're seeing that right now with the voting rights legislation, the Build Back Better reconciliation bill. It's special corporate interests that are prevailing over the progressives in the Democratic Party who are trying to articulate what the people want and what the public opinion polls show they want. I mean, we can get into office, but not into power, because these big corporations, they can go on a capital strike and ruin the economy and blame the reformers. So we need basically a new structure of governance that should include proportional representation, so that all points of view get their fair share of representation in legislative bodies. Should include ranked choice voting for executive offices, so that the spoiler effect doesn't marginalize the Green Party in particular. It means we got to take on the anti-democratic structures that give disproportionate power to the far-right Republicans, the US Senate, the Electoral College, what they're doing now with their gerrymandering. They are entrenching minority rule, and also the capacity to overturn election results by replacing nominally independent election administrators with Republican legislatures or Republican secretaries of state who can refuse to certify elections that Republicans lost and put their own people in power. I mean, we're in a real democracy crisis. So I think when we talk about system change, it's the economic democracy of socialism, but it's also the political democracy of a real democracy. And we don't have that in this country. And that's another thing we get from the mass media, this, sort of refrain that we're the world's greatest democracy. No, the Helsinki Accords were set up in the 70s by the West to go after the Soviet bloc for being anti-democratic. But since the Soviet bloc collapsed, the Helsinki Accords, those countries, most of their reports, criticize the United States for all kinds of problems, from the domination of rich folks' private money in election campaigns, to the Electoral College, to funny business in voter suppression. So we've got to change both our political and our economic system.
I agree. Oh, continue, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that, we need to change the system, because right now we got capitalism with a undemocratic, nominally democratic, a managed democracy, the elites control, and they're imperialists. And we got to take the power from them and put it in the hands of the people who, the average person doesn't want to go to war. I mean, I got drafted for the Vietnam War and I was opposed to it. So, I think that's where most people are at when it comes down to really going and fighting some people you don't even know.
All right. Erum, what will it take, in your opinion, for the cycle of imperialism to end?
This is an economic and political system, and this can be achieved through decentralization. And I agree with Howie, and he described it vast and briefly. So I agree with him.
All right. Okay. Trying to see if we have more questions. I think those are all the questions we kept. So closing thoughts. Erum, any closing thoughts from you?
Yes, in my opinion, I think imperialism can be end if Green Party comes in every country and take control, because we are anti-imperialism, we are anti-racism, and we are anti-war. We support de-weaponization, demilitarization, and our vision is, Green Party vision is, human must not be afraid from human. And if every human feels safe, so from other human, then no war will be fought. So we Green seek a peaceful world, and we are striving for this. So please join Green Party and support us. Thank you.
All right, Austin, closing thoughts.
The main issue of the anti-war fight is a fight of the unknown. Many conflicts, many issues around the world have been arising in the 21st century because we don't talk to each other. We have the power of the internet. We have the power of being able to send a message to somebody in 17 seconds on the other side of the globe. And I don't think we realize it. I can only speak for the issue in Korea because that's the one I'm most familiar with as I live in Korea. But the main issue between the ongoing Korean War is the fact that the United States has no willingness or no acceptance in compromise in working with the North Korean government. They are in entrenched political system for 70 years in the North. And even after reunification, when reunification comes, not if, but when, we will still have to deal with the Juche ideology and the ideology of the DPRK. But the main issue is that the United States doesn't want to try. North Korea has proven time and time again that they will sit down and they will negotiate with the world, with the West, with the United States, but the United States treats them as a child. Long gone are the days where the United States can bully China, where they can bully North Korea, and they can bully Vietnam and other Southeast Asian countries. It's time for a diplomacy of intellectuals and a diplomacy of adults in the room. China is not our enemy. 中国不是我们的敌人. Korea is not our enemy. 북한은 우리는 적이 아니다. So we are trying our best to create a system of sporting diplomacy towards North Korea. They have proven time and time again. They've invited the Harlem Globetrotters to North Korea 5 different times, where we can actually create the change we want to see in the world. All we have to do is sit down and listen and try.
Mr. Hawkins, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think we need to focus a lot more on this new nuclear arms race. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist has the doomsday clock they've maintained since World War II, the closest it's ever been to midnight. And the United States embarked on a nuclear modernization program under the Obama administration, which the Russians and the Chinese in particular have answered with their own nuclear modernization programs. What we're talking about are intercontinental ballistic missiles that are hypersonic, 6 times faster than the intercontinental ballistic missiles we have had, which means you can't even wait for the radar to show they're coming. You've got to launch in anticipation or fear that your own nukes are going to be wiped out, which creates, we used to call it a hair trigger. It's more than a hair trigger than ever before. And then in tactical nukes, both the United States and Russia have this crazy doctrine of escalate to de-escalate with tactical nukes. So if you're in a conventional war and you're losing, the idea is you use the tactical nukes to throw back the other side and then you de-escalate. But we know that's not going to happen. Daniel Ellsberg in his last book, Doomsday Machine, points out how these nuclear systems they're automatic. Once the nukes start flying, they're all going to fly, and that's the end of all of us. So that's something we really got to push. There are now 55 countries who have ratified a treaty to abolish nuclear weapons. I'm forgetting the formal title, but none of the nuclear powers participated in those negotiations, but over 100 countries approved the wording, and now they're in the process of ratifying it. So we got to demand. Pakistan's a nuclear power, didn't participate. The US is a nuclear power, didn't participate. That our countries participate in that process, which is supposed to have been going on since the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1970. And all they've done is say, under that treaty, there were 3 parts. More countries shouldn't get nukes. We've been fairly successful at that. We're going to promote nuclear power, which was bad because that creates the technology you can use to create nuclear weapons. That was not a good thing. And the third part was we're going to negotiate complete and mutual nuclear disarmament. And that has not been pursued. So that's number one. I think we've got to make that a priority. And then I think for those of us in the Green Party, in the peace movement, we need to practice solidarity and internationalism with the oppressed in every country, even countries that the US is in conflict with, but are oppressive toward their own people. Whether they're Kurds in Syria or Uyghurs in China. I mean, the Green Party has a long tradition of this going back to Petra Kelly. Spent a lot of time defending the Tibetans in China, or demanding and risking arrest and getting arrested in the East Bloc for democratic rights and an end to the missile race, the intermediate range nuclear forces that were also, and she did the same thing in the West. And I think, we should promote human rights everywhere. But at the same time, we should not, as the US does, condition negotiations on things like climate and nuclear arms and the global economy on countries adhering to human rights. We can talk about it, but at the same time, we shouldn't condition talks we can make on those life or death issues. And unfortunately, the US is doing that toward China. They whine about human rights, justly in a lot of cases. On the other hand, they say because of the human rights things, we're not going to talk to you about climate, the economy, and nuclear arms. And those things need to be talked about, particularly the US and China, because they're the 2 biggest economies, 2 biggest military forces in the world. And they're such big forces in the world that if they can make progress on some of those life or death issues, it's going to be the benefit of all of us. So for the movement's solidarity, for our governments, we should say, yeah, you can talk about human rights, but don't make that be an obstacle to talking about the climate, the nukes in the economy. And in fact, this is a thought occurred to me recently. If we go to China, the US human rights record has a lot to be desired as well. We got political prisoners. We've got, the police brutality that everybody saw with George Floyd. Why don't we have an agreement or seek an agreement with China? Let's both admit to our human rights violations and make commitments to correct them. That might be more constructive than just this propaganda war, which is just raising tensions.
All right. This is the end of our War and Imperialism live stream. Sorry about that. I'm joined here with Austin. He is the Secretary of the Young Greens of Ohio, Pakistan Green Party Youth Leader, Erum Saleem, and 2020 Green Party Presidential Candidate, Howie Hawkins. Thank you for joining. See you next month.